Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ken Lyons, a friend and cousin of Jim Belding. I'm honored to have been asked to preside at this memorial service. On behalf of the family, I welcome you here today. We're gathered here together to honor and remember Jim's life and to give support and care to the grieving family and to give thanks for the many ways that he touched our lives. We will all have our special memories of Jim, and some of these will stand out as we think about him today. My special memory of him has to do with his prowess as a hunter and a storyteller. Jim started to hunt and provide food for the family table while he was still a young lad. He was bagging partridges, ducks, and geese during his teenage years, and probably before, I think around 12 years old. And then he moved on to hunting the big game. He was well known for his excellent marksmanship and his cool demeanor when he had a target in his sights. He claimed he seldom had buck fever. He came by his passion for hunting honestly, for he was raised in a culture, a hunting culture that prized the activity of hunting. His forefathers passed on the importance of getting game to help supply needed food to the larder of the household. It was a key element for the survival of the pioneers. I know my father years ago used to say, in those times when there was lots of game around, the mother would say, "You take the shotgun down now and get us a duck for dinner." It grew out of this hunting culture. Even in my day, I can recall how fascinating it was as a boy to listen to the men as they gathered to tell and brag a little about their hunting exploitations. Of course, the stories were often embellished and the facts stretched a bit. But that meant the stories were all the more interesting. It was a high form of entertainment and still is today. Who can resist a good story? Jim learned the art of storytelling from his elders, especially the hunting stories. He might have used some artistic license in his storytelling too. I don't know for sure, but I think he might have. Which made them more interesting. I'm not saying he did, he may have. In memory of Jim and of our grandparents, and the pioneers who have gone before us, who were instrumental in making this land what it is today, I'd like to sing a song for you, and it's called "When I First Came to This Land." Jim would know this song, because it's back from the 1960s, and the occasional time when we get together and sing songs and party a little bit, you know. Song I hope will give us an idea of how the sentiments of the pioneer life. This song was written and sung by a guy by the name of Glenn Yarborough back in the 1960s. Oh, yeah. First came to this land, I was not a wealthy man, so I bought myself a farm. Yes, I did what I could. So I got myself a farm, called my farm the muscle in my arm, but the land was sweet and good. I did what I could. Farm had neither no cat, not a soul to holler at. So I got myself a wife, yes, I did what I could. So I got myself a wife, called my wife, run for your life, called my farm the muscle in my arm. But the land was sweet and good, I did what I could. When a year had passed away, I came home one sunny day, found I got myself a son, yes, I did what I could. So I got myself a son, called my son, my work's done, called my wife, run for your life, called my farm the muscle in my arm. But the land was sweet and good, and I did what I could. Son grew up and left the farm, brought a wife back on his arm. Soon the rooms were full of kids, yes, I did what I could. Soon the rooms were full of kids, call those kids with your lids, called my wife, run for your life, called my son, my work's done, called my farm the muscle in my arm. But the land was sweet and good, and I did what I could. When I first came to this land, I was not a wealthy man, but I built my family tree, yes, I did what I could. So I built my family trees enough for me, and the land was sweet and good, and I did what I could. Now I'd like to invite Janet to come forward and have some words about her grandfather.
Thank you, Ken. Grandpa Jim was born in 1928 in Abbotsford, BC, and his family moved to Saskatchewan when he was a young child, and he lived in and around the Birch Hills, Brownsmouth, and Prince Albert areas for his entire life. Jim was a private and reserved person around us younger people in the family, but I know a few stories. He was resilient, and he didn't let anything stop him. Perhaps the best example of this is that he beat polio in his early 20s, at a time when most people didn't. Jim always did what Jim wanted to do, no matter what anyone else said. He wanted to become a pilot and help in World War II, but his responsibilities on the farm prevented him from leaving. So he became a pilot anyway, and he flew for the sheer joy of it. Many of you might remember his flying stories, like the time he scared his instructor by flying underneath some power lines. Jim was told by the instructor that he couldn't fly underneath them, he should go over top. Well, Jim wasn't going to let anyone tell him what he couldn't do. So he flew right underneath. Or maybe the time that he tried to give Herman Pearson a fright by playing aerial chicken with his windmill. The plane was more chicken than Jim. He hit the windmill and he walked away fine. The plane not so much. As Jim told it, for some reason, just before he crashed, he felt the need to undo his seatbelt. Maybe he was bending down for something. In any case, because he wasn't belted in, he was ejected from the cockpit and able to survive the crash without a scratch by clinging to the wing. Jim worked hard all his life to provide for his family as a farmer, a school bus driver, and a taxidermist. When my dad was about 5, he helped his sister write a poem about his dad's job. Bears are in the basement suite, drying in the furnace heat. A duck, a hawk, an eagle, an owl, a wolf with an occasional howl. Fish of every shape and size, with painted bodies and glassy eyes. Deer and antelope are there too, fox and rabbits looking at you. Just in case you haven't guessed, my father is a taxidermist. Jim's taxidermy skills knew no bounds. From a jackalope, to a hummingbird, to a 10-foot marlin, to a shrew my cat once caught, and everything in between. The man could work wonders with a needle and thread. He loved his grandchildren, and there was nothing he wouldn't do for us. He took great pride in being able to help us whenever he could, supporting us and always wanting us to succeed. When my brother was 7, Jim knew that he loved to draw, and all we had was the kitchen table for him to draw on. So, Grandpa built him a special art desk. Kim used that desk into his 20s, and now he works in Regina as an animator. I'd like to think Jim has a little credit for that. Jim was kind and thoughtful, and he showed his love for us in the little things, like when he kept up a subscription to Reader's Digest so that he could give me the magazines and I could read them, or when he saved the newspapers so my brother could read the comics. I don't remember this, but Mom tells me that when we were very young, Grandpa would even change the channel to Sesame Street when curling was on. We all know how much he loved curling. One of the great joys of Jim's life was the great outdoors. He loved camping, fishing, and most of all, hunting. I'm told he was a good shot, and he always liked to let it be known that his hits weren't just luck, they were skill. He was patient, and he would do whatever it took to ensure a good catch. He would wait for hours, he would walk for miles, he would crawl on his belly through the brush. Once he even made my dad do a little dangerous driving. I'm not sure what I thought he was hunting with, but I never once saw any guns. In fact, it never even occurred to me that he would have any. He and Dad would go away for a few days. Mom would get her hair permed, and then there would be deer sausage, my favorite. Imagine my surprise. I'm 30 years old, and just a few days ago was when I learned. They used to call my grandpa Machine Gun Kelly. He was an avid collector of guns, and at one point, he had 28 guns. One of those guns was a .44 Magnum, which came in handy on one of his hunting trips, which my dad's sister wrote a poem about. Steel-Eyed Jim was a hunting man who trudged the woods for a kill. He'd walk for miles and miles and miles, knowing his prey was just over the hill. One blustery day in November, Steel-Eyed Jim shot an 8-point deer. When he got to his kill, there stood 3 men. He could tell their intention was clear. We got here first, and we're claiming this deer. There's not much you can do about that. Steel-Eyed Jim slowly opened his jacket. The .44 Magnum was easy to see. I suggest you move away from my deer, because this gun is the equalizer for me. From what I'm told, Grandpa got the deer. Grandpa, Dad, brother, uncle, husband, hunting buddy, friend. Jim was many things to many people, but most of all, he was loved. And Grandpa, you will be missed. Thank you.
So if there's anyone else who would like to come forward and have a few words, you're welcome to come forward right now.
Good afternoon, folks. I have a few words I'd like to say about Jim Belding. I first met Jim in the early 1960s. He was a unique and interesting person. He did many things through his life, from working in construction to farming, and eventually he turned to taxidermy business. Being a taxidermist myself, I got to know Jim quite well. I never hunted or fished with Jim, but I know this was his great love. He loved hunting, fishing, trapping, and he enjoyed wildlife and all of nature. He was loved and respected by his wife and family and will be missed. Long be his memory.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Well, I'll continue on here then. In keeping with the storytelling idea that Jim used to love being around and told, as I've mentioned, his own stories, I have one that, if you'll bear with me, a hunting story. So here goes. There were some men who were swapping yarns, mostly about hunting, but once when he was camped in the bush, he decided to take a little walk near his camp. Unfortunately, he left his rifle behind. Not a good plan when you're a hunter. As he made his way down a narrow pathway with high and dense trees on either side, he heard a noise behind him. He turned and looked, and to his horror, guess what? There was a big black bear following him. He didn't want to argue with that bear, so he decided to make a run for it. And of course, the bear was soon on his heels. And as he felt that the bear was soon on him, he noticed a big tree branch extending across the pathway, about 10-12 feet up in the air. So he thought he had no choice. He'd have to jump for it. He said to his friends, "I made a mighty leap for that limb, but I missed it." And they replied, "You missed the branch and you're here to tell about it? How can that be?" And the man replied, "I missed it on the way up, but I caught it coming down." Jim was not a religious man, but he found his God in the beauty of the sunrise and in the stillness of the woods, as only a hunter would know. The sound of the loon cry over a still northern lake and in the rhythm of nature. I know that he was thrilled to see the returning of the geese and their honking announcements that they had returned, and in turn when they began to prepare for their long journey south. The sounds of the meadowlark and the notes of the songbirds were music to his ears. He was a man of many talents and interests, as Jenna pointed out in her talk. He had a curiosity about life, and he sought learning and knowledge through reading. And he had strong opinions about the injustices in the world. He was a man of courage, and Jenna mentioned this already, who faced up to overcome his encounter with serious polio when he was a young man. He was a supportive and caring husband, father, and grandfather. He and Olga cherished their family. I've known him all my life. He was like a big brother to me. Rest in peace, Jim. And now I have a few prayers I'd like to say. Let us pray. God of grace and glory, we thank you for Jim, who is so near and dear to us and who has now been taken from us. We thank you for the friendship he gave and for the strength and peace he brought. We thank you for the love he offered and received while he was with us on earth. We pray that nothing good in this man's life will be lost, but will be of benefit to the world, that all that was important to him will be respected by those who follow, and that everything in which he was great will continue to mean much to us now that he is dead. We ask that he may go on living in his children, his family, and his friends, in their hearts and minds, and in their courage and in their consciousness. Amen. Now let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
Amen.
Lord, now lettest thou thy servant James depart in peace according to thy word. Amen. And now Jenna will read Psalm 121.
Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore. The word of God. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. Now, in keeping with that song about the hills and looking towards the hills, I have an old Irish tune here. It's called Come by the Hills. And as I look at the words of this song and I've sung it, I can't help but think about the hills out around home, where I grew up. And that's out in the Derby district. And some of you know that area as well as I do. And about the hills in that area, the Derby Hills. And of course there's Birch Hills too. Yeah. So this is a song that I know that Jim would really appreciate. Instruments have a habit of going on a tune. Tune them up before you come. They always go out a little bit here and there. This is about the weather. Eh? Okay. Come by the hills to the land of fancy history, and stand where the peaks meet the the sky and the rocks reach the sea, where the rivers run clear and the bracken is gold in the sun, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Come by the hills to the land where life is a song, and sing while the birds fill the air with their joy all day long, where the trees sway in time and even the wind sings in tune, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Come by the hills to the land where legend remains, where stories of old stir the heart and may yet come again, where the past has been lost and the future is still to be won, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Come by the hills to the land where fancy is free, and stand where the peaks meet the sky and the rocks reach the sea, where the rivers run clear and the bracken is gold in the sun, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Now we'll conclude here with the old Irish blessing. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Well, again, on behalf of the family, it's good to see you out here today. And I believe there is lunch now after. And so we will go in and have a nice lunch right away. And just before we do, I'll ask a blessing on the food that we're about to receive. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all of your gifts. We thank you for the life of James Belding. And we thank you for the food that we're about to receive. We ask you to bless it to our use, and us to thy service, and keep us ever mindful of the needs of others. We pray in Christ's name. Amen.